start the video, I just want to let you know that if you scroll down to my description box and click that link, it'll bring you to this page, to my cookbook. And you can buy my cookbook either using PayPal or your credit card. And once you do so, you'll get a downloadable PDF sent to your email that will look like this. Then you have access to 55 plus vegan recipes that all have an accurate photo representation of them. Hope you enjoy. Hello there, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And in this one, I want to bring you along on some super cozy, delicious, yet easy vegan recipes that'll keep you warm this winter. For me, I know I get a lot more lazy in the winter time and cooking kind of falls a little bit more on the back burner, yet we still want delicious and simple recipes to make. First things first, we're gonna make some apple pie, a lazy apple pie. So these recipes were actually suggested by you guys, which makes this video a little extra fun because you may see your name popping up in the corner here. But for this lazy apple pie, I accidentally made a mistake and read apple crumble as one of the suggestions, but also read shepherd's pie, and they were on top of each other, so my brain combined the two to make apple pie. But hey, we're human, we all make mistakes, so let's just carry on here. I peeled, cored, and chopped my apples into decent sized chunks and then lined them into my cast iron skillet with a good amount of vegan butter. The pan was actually a little bit warm here simply because I washed the pan and then put it on the burner just to kind of evaporate any extra liquid, because that's just what you do when you want to take care of your cast iron skillet. I covered my apples with a half a cup of sugar, a teaspoon worth of cinnamon, a half a teaspoon worth of nutmeg, and a good pinch of clove. You can also add a touch of salt to this as well, just to kind of balance out the sweetness. I then put it into the oven and baked it for about 15 minutes. I went over on these a little bit because I was busy doing something else, so your apples will look a little less cooked than mine at the end of this, so just follow the recipe that I wrote down below and it will turn out better looking than mine. I pulled out this pastry dough a couple hours before I rolled it out just to make sure it was completely thawed, and then just using a rolling pin rolled it out until its desired size and then plopped it on top of the cooked apples. Just make sure you read the back of your pastry dough package and you cook it for the appropriate amount of time. I just tucked my pastry dough, the excess kind of around the apples, and then actually got my hand on top of the apples and tried to form the dough onto it so that way the apples stuck to the dough when it cooked. I then shoved it into the oven and cooked it for 30 minutes. 1, 2, 3. And the next day, when the lighting was a lot better, I wanted to show this off in all of its glory with the beautiful natural lighting. So I cut it up into desired sizes and then plated it up, serving it with some vegan coconut yogurt, but you can serve it with some vegan whipped cream or nothing at all. This is a great recipe if you're looking for an easy dessert that'll take you a minimal amount of effort, but you still want to impress people and make yourself look like you're a great baker, even though maybe you're not, like me. To me, a cozy yet nourishing drink in the wintertime is an absolute must, and one of my go-tos is matcha. And I'd like to say a big thank you to matcha.com, also known as Matcha Kari, for sponsoring this video. If you've been hanging out on my channel for a while, you would have heard of them before and maybe you would have tried them as well. So you can click the link down in my description box and get 20% off site-wide using the code XMissJulia at checkout. I absolutely love their matcha. It's the best matcha I've ever had in my life. And today I'm going to be using their single estate matcha and show you how to make a very Christmassy cranberry matcha latte. We're gonna combine a half a package of fresh cranberries, a cup of sugar, and a cup and a half of water. After that, we're going to whisk together a teaspoon worth of single estate matcha from matcha.com and a good splash of water. The water should be hot, but not yet boiled. Let's add 2 tablespoons worth of our cranberry mixture, some frothed oat milk, and then we're gonna top it with our matcha. Literally Christmas in a cup. And here you have it, a delicious Christmas latte. It is warm, but I am going to use a straw with it just so I can get the cranberry. Let's try it out. Some cinnamon on this would be absolutely fantastic as well. It'd make it a little extra Christmassy. But if you'd like to try out some of matcha.com's matcha, highly recommend it. Click the link down in my description box. Again, it's Exynos Julia at checkout for 20% off site-wide. They also have an array of other products to choose from. I personally love their turmeric. So thank you to matcha.com for sponsoring today's video and my channel so endlessly. Make yourself delicious Christmassy matcha this season and you won't regret it. Let's get on to the rest of the recipes. Multiple of you guys suggested I try to make some pho. One of you is saying that I should make it with warming spices and rice noodles. Others just saying make pho or pho. And I am here to do it. So first things first is I chopped up an onion, and it doesn't really matter what way you chop any of this up because we're just going to strain it out of the broth at the end. So don't worry about perfection here. However, I did chop up about 3 inches worth of fresh ginger, 2 cloves of garlic that I just crushed, 2 ribs of celery, and a big handful of cilantro. I threw that into a nice and warm pot with some olive oil, along with a decent amount of salt. We want to make sure that we're seasoning everything because we don't want our soup or our pho to be bland at the end. While that was doing its thing, I got my mushrooms ready, so I just wiped the dirt off of the little button mushrooms with a cloth, and I highly suggest not actually washing your mushrooms because they kind of don't brown as well when you get them wet. So just use a cloth to kind of wipe the dirt away from them. But anyways, once the veggies have coated the bottom of the pot with a nice brown deliciousness, we are adding 5 seeds of clove, 5 little balls of allspice, 2 cardamom pods that I just crushed with the side of my knife to kind of crack open. And then I'm going to add some fennel as well, just a small handful of fennel, and a big stick of cinnamon. I would suggest trying to add some star anise if you have it. I just honestly didn't have any in the house, unfortunately, and it was kind of my plan to add it, but it is what it is, and we did without. I let the spices warm up for about 30 seconds to a minute before adding a whole box of broth. I had half of a box already hanging out, and I added half of a new box on top of that, covered it with its lid, and let it do its thing for about an hour. And then once we thought our broth was all good to go, I added a fine mesh strainer on top of a big bowl and just strained the broth through that, and then just kind of used the back of my spatula to smush all of the goodness out of anything that was there. I juiced half of a lime's juice, added the broth back to my pot along with the lime's juice, and a big scoop of brown aged miso. Doesn't matter what type of miso that you decide to add, I just suggest adding it for a little extra umami-ness and saltiness to the dish. Once we got that all mixed in, I added a large sliced up carrot and about 3 baby bok choys and let that do its thing for about 10 minutes. Or until the veggies are cooked to your liking. I cooked up some rice noodles separately and then added that to my bowl along with my broth and my veggies and then all of the delicious toppings that you want to add on top of pho. I would like to say that I completely forgot that I sauteed mushrooms for this, so you're not going to see me adding mushrooms to this bowl, but I did enjoy it later on. I garnished this with some basil, cilantro, hoisin sauce, sriracha, pea sprouts, and some extra lime as well. And this was absolutely delicious and definitely well worth the hour wait to make this broth. This is not Alex G. Threw me for a loop by suggesting vegan pozole. I'd never even heard of this before. I did do lots of Googling, researching, and figure this thing out. After a little bit of time, I think I have, or at least maybe sort of kind of. I also had some suggestions for soup and a high protein soup, so this is kind of everything all in one. And yeah, let's get into it. First things first is I chopped up some onion and some garlic and got that into the frying pan on low heat and some olive oil and let that do its thing for several minutes. While that was going, I got the outer layer of the tomatillos, the skin part, off of them. I just kind of peeled the skin away from the body of them and then threw them under some water just to kind of rinse off any of the excess stickiness that was on them, gave them a pat dry, and then chopped them into bite-sized pieces. These tomatillos were actually kind of hard to find for me, so I suggest going to a little market, and sometimes they have a little more variety of produce versus just like a regular grocery store. I opened up some pinto beans and some lapini beans. This actually calls for something called hominy, I think I'm saying that right, but who knows? I couldn't find that, so I just kind of substituted it for whatever bean I thought would kind of be similar. And then I also threw in a half a can of corn, which isn't a typical thing, but hominy is in the corn family, if I understand correctly, so I thought I'd just throw in some corn. I added about a teaspoon worth of oregano and a half a teaspoon worth of cumin, and sliced up some jalapeno, threw that in there along with a sliced up lime. The thing that I would do differently, however, is actually just add lime juice to this and not slice the entire lime and put it in here, just because it did add a little bit of the pithy bitterness of that lime. So discard throwing a sliced lime in this recipe and just add the lime juice. Other than that, this was absolutely delicious. I myself love a little bit more of a wild card dish, so I discarded the chili idea, and multiple of you guys did suggest chili, but I feel like there's too many recipes for chili out there and not enough recipes for some baked dip thing. So let's make some baked dip thing. So first things first is I got a cup worth of cashews into a bowl along with some hot water and let that sit for about 25 minutes. The longer the better though. Chopped up some onion and some garlic, added some olive oil to my cast iron skillet and got the onion and garlic in there along with some salt and some pepper and let that do its thing until it was translucent and slightly browned. All in all, we're adding 2 cups of liquid to this along with our cup of cashews, 3 tablespoons worth of nutritional yeast, a teaspoon worth of salt, a tablespoon worth of white balsamic vinegar, a tablespoon worth of apple cider vinegar, and a heaping tablespoon worth of miso paste. And we're also going to blend in the onion and the garlic as well. So once we got that all into the blender, blend until completely smooth. And yes, it may take a minute or 2 depending on your blender. So let it do its thing for a while, and you can't overblend it. So blend until your heart desires. I chopped up a whole bunch of spinach and threw that into my cast iron skillet as well until it was nice and wilted and turned into the nothingness that spinach does. Threw about half of the mixture into the pan with my spinach and added 3 tablespoons in total of brown rice flour. You can also just add normal flour or oat flour. I personally just like brown rice flour in these types of recipes, but you can use whatever flour your preference is. I chopped up about a cup worth of artichoke hearts as well. This is optional too, but it did add an extra little yumminess and kind of a little surprise and some bites as well. So highly suggest artichoke in the dip, but again, it's optional, as basically everything is. You could make none of my recipes and I would still be happy to be your friend. Once we got that all into our pan, I chucked that into the oven for about 35 minutes, and it did form a little bit of a golden crust on top, but you can just use your spoon like I did and mix it all up again and get that nice, beautiful color underneath of it. Dip some bread in it, whatever type of bread your heart desires, and enjoy. And time for some cabbage rolls. Cabbage rolls are one of those things that I feel like not a lot of people have the time or the desire to make, and I personally kind of want to change that because they are very delicious. First things first is I chopped up an onion and some celery, 2 ribs of celery. I then finally chopped up a portobello mushroom, some shiitake mushrooms, and some brown little button mushrooms as well. You can do whatever array of mushrooms your heart desires, or just portobello mushroom. That's totally up to you. I got some olive oil into a pan along with my onion and my celery, seasoned it with some salt and some pepper and a touch of chili flakes. Let that do its thing until they were slightly browned. We want a nice caramelization on those veggies. I rinsed a 1/3 cup of rice under some cold water and got that cooking as well. Make sure you season everything, including your rice, because we don't want these cabbage rolls to be bland. I feel like any cabbage roll that I've had in my life has kind of been a little bit sad or bland. The odd one, obviously, that you get is absolutely freaking fantastic, and this is the goal. As you saw, I got my mushrooms into my cast iron skillet and cooked them until they were nice and browned. And while that was going, I got some red split lentils into a bowl along with some hot water and let that soak for about 10 minutes or until the mushrooms were done. So what we're going to do from here is combine everything together. Our celery and our onions, our browned mushrooms, our rice, and our red lentils as well. I lost the footage of me adding the red lentils to this mixture, but trust me, you will see them in a hot minute when we are rolling our cabbage rolls up. But we do need a delicious red sauce on top of our cabbage rolls. And this is going to be very simple. Throw it into the pot that you cooked all of your veggies in to get all of the extra flavor. So we're adding a can of crushed tomatoes, no pre-seasoned tomato sauce, just crushed tomatoes, and we're going to throw in good handfuls of basil. We're just going to crush the basil in our hands first, just to kind of wake it up, and season this sauce with salt, pepper, touch of chili flakes, and some crushed garlic as well. Throw the lid on there and let it do its thing for about 35 minutes to an hour on low heat. The next day, I am actually going to make these cabbage rolls. So I threw a cabbage into a pot of boiling salted water and let that do its thing for about 10 minutes with the lid on. I let it cool for a little bit just so I could touch it, and then slowly but surely took all of the cabbage leaves that I could off of the cabbage. This does take a little bit of time, so just be patient with it. And if you want a better tutorial, there definitely is a better tutorial on the internet somewhere. So just do a little digging for yourself and see what best works for you in this situation. I added my mixture to my cabbage leaves and just kind of folded carefully and surely into the cabbage leaves. So I took the mixture and just kind of mushed it into my hands a little bit to kind of form a ball or a cylinder, I guess I should say, and then stuck it at the bottom of the cabbage leaves, tucked the bottom of that leaf over that, folded the sides in, and then continued to roll until it was completely rolled up like a little burrito. You can see here what I mean a little bit by folding the end, folding the sides in, and then rolling it. The sauce definitely thickened over the evening, which is to be expected, especially because I let it simmer very slowly for about 45 minutes. So I added a touch of that salted cabbage water to it just to kind of thin it out, and then slathered my cabbage rolls in the sauce. Don't be shy with the sauce. There's so much delicious flavor in the tomato sauce, and you don't want to skip out on that. I added a little bit more of that cabbage water along with a drizzle of olive oil, some pepper, some chili flakes, and a little bit of nutritional yeast on top too. We're then going to cover it with either a lid or some tinfoil like I am doing, and just tightly fold the tinfoil over to make sure it's completely sealed shut, and throw it into your oven at 350 degrees. Bake for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. You can just poke these with either a fork or a knife to see if the cabbage is soft enough. I like a little bit of a bite still to my cabbage, so cook to your liking. And to use up the rest of that tomato sauce, let's make some freaking lasagna, because I had so many suggestions for lasagna. This is a super simple one. You already saw me make the sauce, so you can make that exact same sauce for this and either have some left over or make a little bit more lasagna than I made. Slathering this baking dish with some olive oil and then layering my lasagna with the base being the sauce, adding some noodles, some sliced zucchini, some fresh basil, more sauce, nutritional yeast, and then just keep on doing that layering thing with the sauce, the noodles, the fresh basil, the nutritional yeast. And then I actually decided to add a thick layer of the spinach artichoke dip in the middle of this lasagna because I thought it'd be extra fun and extra delicious. You do not have to do this. You can either sub this for some vegan feta or ricotta, or you can layer your lasagna with some vegan mozzarella. I just didn't have any vegan cheese in the house, and I didn't really feel like going out to get any, so this is how I did my lasagna, and it absolutely was so delicious. I love adding a creamy element like this dip that I already had hanging out in the fridge. So I baked my lasagna according to what the noodles needed on my package, so just read the back of your noodle package and cook your lasagna according to that. And then let it cool out of the oven for about 10 minutes and enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'm so happy that you guys gave me all of these delicious recipe ideas. I'll see you again so very soon. Lots of love to you all. Mwah!